All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of More Content Talk. That's the only show that cuts through the glam, the glitz, and all the bullshit to bring you the truthiest news that we can find. So today, um, something very fascinating happened. Um, because, I've said several times before in the past on my show and elsewhere that Trump really isn't like conservative in the traditional sense of the word. Conservatism is, especially in the modern era, is a lot about affordability, making things more affordable. And Trump has no interest in that. He's demonstrated that on several occasions, but he hasn't outright come out and really said it, I think. Maybe alluded to it, but he really said it recently because what he said was, we're still going to have these H-1B visas. And when Laura Ingraham kind of pressed him on that and said, well, doesn't that kind of go against the whole American first ethos because you're essentially bringing people in from other countries to do jobs that Americans could do? And he said, Americans can't do these jobs because they lack the talent to be able to do it. And he said, we need to bring in these talented individuals. He used the word talented from other countries to come in and do these jobs. And of course, Mago was very upset by this, and rightfully so, because what they voted for, right, with this anti-immigration kind of sentiment, is to make uh, those jobs for Americans. You don't have to necessarily think that that's right, but that's what they voted for. And, I can kind of see both sides of the argument, really, because on the one hand, you're bringing in people who are very talented to work here to do things like, build missiles and stuff like that, um, you want the most talented people working on those jobs. You don't want just somebody walking in off the street getting that job. But then on the other hand, we've seen this kind of decline in interest to train workers to do pretty much anything. And that brings up all kinds of concerns for everyone, not just people who build missiles. Because if the employers don't want to train anyone anymore, then that means you have a bunch of young people who may be very talented, um, kind of labeled as unqualified and untalented simply because they don't have work experience. So this becomes a kind of vicious cycle, and it's a very complex and fascinating topic to kind of discuss. And I think that oftentimes we're not really allowed to talk about it because we're either seen as being bad for advocating for, immigration and bringing in the most talented, or we're seen as being bad for saying, hey, well, why don't you train Americans to do these jobs too? And I think both points are valid, and I think the topic is very complex. But, the fact that Donald Trump, Mr. America First, is saying, I don't want to waste my time training these individuals to do these jobs. They're not talented enough. If the most conservative president, the guy who's gotten the most conservative wins in recent history, I mean, let's just be honest, and been the most successful conservative president perhaps ever. I mean, maybe disregarding Reagan, but I would even say he's a little more successful than Reagan. You can debate me on that. I don't really care. It's what I think. If that guy is saying you're not talented enough, you, the American citizen, is not talented enough, what does that mean for the future of American politics? Who is fighting for Americans anymore? Because it's certainly not the conservatives. They've made that very clear. And obviously, liberals, the whole point of liberalism is, it's not necessarily open borders. That's what conservatives say, but you want the most talented individual in place, right? So you have naturally as a liberal an inclination toward not open borders, not everyone running in, but you know, allowing immigrants in a legal way to come to this country and compete in the economy. But it doesn't seem like there are many people interested in helping Americans anymore. And I think that that's going to have some pretty bad implications for the country going forward. You kind of need that guy who's fighting for the American citizen in some way and saying, like, even if he's not talented, right? Giving him a shot. Give this guy a shot. Don't just overlook him because he doesn't have a resume that's 10 pages long. I don't know. Maybe this is the next genius. Maybe this is the next guy who can just do things well without experience. There are people like that. We've had a long history in America of allowing what we call natural talents to flourish. They're just naturally talented. We don't really know why. I'm sure there's more of a reason, and I don't buy into this whole it's genetic thing. I I don't necessarily understand it. But if you're saying you need experience to work, then you're not going to see those natural talents anymore. That's the end of an era. That was part of the American dream, was that you could any guy could walk in off the street and be, I don't know, the next Dizzy Gillespie, or the next Mary Shelley, or you know anyone really. Mary Shelley obviously is an American, but the magnitude of that talent. Virginia Woolf, I guess. I don't know. And is this the end of that? Is that it? Is that game over? Because I'll tell you one thing, like, I'm thankful that, like, my resume is long, if that's the case, because these young kids who are coming up, they're not going to get their foot in the door. And if they never get their foot in the door, if they're constantly competing with people with more experience, and if experience is equated with talent, and if no one cares about the plight of the American anymore, then that means that you truly are on your own. And what does that mean for example, I know of, I wouldn't call them a friend, they're an acquaintance, who they were in a relationship as a stay-at-home mother and wife, and they just got a divorce, what it didn't work out, right? But they had been that stay-at-home wife for years, really long time, to the point of, this is a woman who had a master's degree, but she didn't have any work experience. And someone obviously has to take a chance on that person, right? They can't just assume that because they have a master's degree that that means that they have the experience needed to complete the job. So what if people just stop taking chances on that person altogether? What does that mean for America? What does it mean for the economy? And I think a lot of people, they freak out and they become isolationist. I'm not necessarily arguing for that at all. I don't know that isolationism is the answer to this question, but there must be an answer. That's the point, and no one's really thinking about it. People are just kind of assuming that they'll always be able to find work. And with the rise of things like AI and the fact that you have companies putting hundreds of thousands of people out of work on top of this, and now you're saying, oh, well, Americans aren't talented enough to have these jobs. I mean, this is really bad. And it's happening in a way that I don't think a lot of people thought it would. It's not necessarily the rise of tech that is causing this. It's just kind of this assumption that Americans are untalented, that is in the elite, and it's dangerous. And it's not just liberals. Everyone said, oh, if we defeat liberalism and the left and leftism, we will defeat this rise of technocracy, this rise of the hatred of the American, and it didn't work. So what now is the answer? Someone is going to come along and truly be a candidate of the working person, the working class person. And when I say working class, I'm not talking about the military. I'm not talking about air traffic controllers like the Senate Democrats are talking about. That's not real working class. These are people who get benefits. They have lobbyists lobbying for them. They have unions work, like, on their side. There's a lot of things that these guys have that you don't. Military people get free college, for crying out loud, you know. under certain circumstances. You're not getting that. Not unless you're considered exceptional, and apparently, because that's where the scholarships come in and grants, and apparently the elite don't think Americans are exceptional anymore. They're not talented, right? So you're not getting free college. You're not getting anyone who's refusing to shut down the government for you. That's for sure. They don't care about real working class people. And times are going to get tough because of this for most people, most working people anyway. You know, these guys in these government jobs, think about it. They went online and they, oh well, we furloughed all these government employees and it's so sad and all this, and like to a certain extent, yeah, I agree with you. But not only are they making like 10 times more than I am, they've got benefits, they've got health insurance, they've got all these fancy things that most working people will never have. That's just the truth. Um, it really begs the question, why is it that we only care about certain working people and not others? And it seems that the working people that we care about are all high income earners. You would think it would be the other way around. You would think we would have more empathy for people who of lower incomes. But it really seems to be that we're only interested in helping people who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Because that's what these guys working in the government are making. They're making at least 100,000 a year, if not more. And it's fascinating the worship of wealth that we have in this country. We don't care about talent. We just care about wealth. That's all we care about. I think a perfect illustration of this is when, you know, some of this recent music that these artists have been releasing, and it's just very clearly bad. And I think you know who I'm talking about. Um, I think Kanye West is a great example of just, you know, the quality of his music has gone down over the years. He hasn't gotten more talented, he's gotten less talented. I don't care if you like the guy or not, it's just a fact. But everyone is still throwing money at this guy and saying how much they love this guy. He's not working hard. What was it? There was a one album where he basically just like said the word poop or something like that. And he, you know, I was, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And then his whole thing about like, I'm Hitler or something. You know, I don't listen to this kind of music, but I see it online, and I'm just like, you know, that's what's considered talent now, experience. He's experienced rapper, right? Like he doesn't have to be good. It's funny, you know, but it's the future. Who's gonna fight for the American anymore? Who's gonna fight for the guy who is a hard worker and is trying to get to the top? And will that guy even be able to get to the top anymore? Or is it just game over? Because if Donald Trump comes out and calls that guy untalented, who's going to say that guy is talented? Who's going to say that he can do it anymore? Who's going to say it? I don't know what the answer to that question is. All right, everyone. I hope you have a phenomenal day, evening, afternoon, fiesta, siesta, downtime, chill time, lunchtime, party time. And remember, when life gets you down, you can always laugh at something else. Take care, folks.